From their rise to prominence in their Nintendo 64 platforming adventures to their questionable exploits on the Xbox 360, Banjo and Kazooie have had quite an eventful history. What started as a cancelled SNES RPG known as Project Dream evolved into one of the most beloved franchises of the late 90s, capturing players' hearts with its unique charm and wonderful worlds. Today, we'll explore the ins and outs of each game in the series and speculate about what the future could hold for our favourite bear and bird duo. This is the evolution of Banjo-Kazooie through the ages. How's it going, everyone, and welcome back to the Loading Zone, where today we're going to be talking about the history of the Banjo-Kazooie series. But today I won't be alone in this episode because I am joined by a very special guest. I'd like to give a warm welcome to my friend and fellow Rare enthusiast, Mr. Jiggy Lookback.
What's up, everybody? Oh man, you know they're talking about Banjo, so I gotta be here. Let's do it.
You ready to talk some Banjo-Kazooie today then?
I am always Actually, you know what? The better question is, when am I not ready to talk about Banjo-Kazooie?
I love the spirit. That is perfect.
It happens in every conversation.
I can relate. I truly can. And I suppose a good place to jump in would be sort of the origins of the series, because it's interesting. Banjo-Kazooie didn't actually start off as Banjo-Kazooie, right? If you think about Project Dream.
Oh yeah. Rare has always had a thing for pirates. Apparently since the beginning of time. Because if you think about it, like even Donkey Kong Country, their first SNES out. Well, is it their first SNES outing?
I believe so.
I was pulling that fact out of my butt. I was sounding so confident, but I don't actually know if that's
I'm pretty
true.
sure that's the case, yeah.
But even in Donkey Kong Country, you know, pirates were a thing. That was a thing. There was a ship.
Yeah.
There was everything. They have this weird sort of obsession with pirates, and Project Dream was going to be that game about pirates. And if people know anything about Rare today...
We look over at Sea of Thieves. It all comes full circle.
It really does. They finally could make it. I honestly thought Project Dream looked really cool.
Oh, it did. You know, the idea of Rare making an RPG is kind of the coolest thing ever.
100%. It would be probably my favorite RPG. Just because of that fact.
And I'd have loved to have seen what they'd have done if it had transitioned to an N64 game, because I'd heard they were planning something sort of massive in scope for the N64 version of Project Dream, which was later then retooled into Banjo-Kazooie.
Right. So the original game, I just want to say this because no one ever says this online. Project Dream on the SNES looked amazing. It was like this kind of pseudo, well, it was an RPG, but it was like a weird visual. I wanted to say 2.5D, but it's bizarre. I don't know. It's like over the top, but it has those Donkey Kong Country like sprite graphics.
Yep.
They give it kind of a really unique look. It looked amazing. I thought it looked so cool. And then there's footage of it transitioning into an N64 title, and then it looks like stinky poo-poo garbage. I mean, let's be honest here. The visuals like went from a 10 to like a 3. It just looks like a typical dirty N64 game.
True. The stylistic choice they went with for their SNES games, the way they pushed the boundaries of the graphics of that system was incredible. You saw that in Donkey Kong Country, and also, like you said, with the early builds of Project Dream.
Yeah. How it looks would probably have changed, let's be honest.
Oh, absolutely.
But, I mean, it did look bad. Like, it did not look good. It took a serious hit, I think, transferring hardware. But they were excited about the possibility. And then, you know, Banjo was just a side character there. And they latched onto Banjo for whatever reason. They're like, oh, this could be cool. And then they made Banjo the main character. And I don't know if you know this fact, but a lot of his moves were inspired by, like, skaters.
Right, yeah, I remember seeing that.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Like, once you watch that and see it with that in mind, you're like, oh yeah, I can see it. Like, he's got these very, like, skate moves. And then they were like, oh, he needs a double jump. And they didn't want to do the artificial, oh, he can just jump in the air and defy physics. They're like, we should give him a reason to have a double jump. And so they put a bird in his backpack. And they're like, why don't we make that a whole character?
Right.
And so Banjo-Kazooie was born. And it didn't change names for a while, but I don't know what the prompt was for changing it from Banjo-Kazooie to Banjo-Kazooie. But I just know that it was Kazoo first.
Right, because I do remember seeing a couple of iterations of the original logo, you know, with Banjo and Kazooie in the middle, and it just said Banjo-Kazooie, and there are quite a few versions of that. There was one of them that did say Banjo-Kazooie on it, but that took a while for them to make that step, to change the name.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why. I have no knowledge of why they added the IE, but I like it. It's better.
Yeah, it rolls off the tongue. I think it's more memorable.
For sure. But where did it go from there? Where did it go? Went from Project Dream, Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Kazooie,
Right.
and there we are. Boom. Actually, no. Diddy Kong Racing came out first.
True, that was Banjo's first official appearance in any video game.
What a glorious first appearance.
Oh, honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. Diddy Kong Racing, truly fantastic racing game. Better than Mario Kart 64, no questions asked.
100%. 100%.
And that's where we saw Banjo make his debut. Granted, he didn't have Kazooie with him, but he was still there.
I'm trying to remember if... I swear, there's something that mentions he had Kazooie. Is it in the manual?
Yeah, in the instruction manual, I think there was some mention of his future adventures with Kazooie.
Yeah, like they tease it. They're like, yeah, it's a thing, but they didn't want to model it or something. I don't know.
Right. I think what it was is that they were planning to have Banjo-Kazooie as their holiday release for that season, but they didn't have it ready in time, so they made Diddy Kong Racing instead, so they knew Banjo-Kazooie was going to happen, and then just teased that in the instruction manual.
Yeah. It says even before the start of his future partnership with Kazooie. Yep. So Kazooie was still a thing. Just, has someone looked closely enough inside Banjo's backpack in the game?
Maybe you could no-clip yourself into there.
What if there's like a little red feather or something? That would be a nice touch.
Oh, that would be awesome. It's exactly the type of thing Roa would do back in the day.
Oh yeah, that's what I hunt for. You know, on my channel, I just dive into things. I'm like, where are the references? Where are the Easter eggs? Where is everything? One of the cool things I saw, I did a thing where I literally just use the camera tool and go through Banjo-Kazooie, and I found that there's an audience that watches you in the Furnace Fun at the end of Kazooie.
Really?
Yes, there's an audience. If you turn around and look up, like on the wall, there's an audience of all the enemies in the game.
Is it just made up of 2D images of them, or is it their actual models?
It's like a texture on the wall.
Oh, interesting.
It's a really cool, like, art piece looking thing.
Can you actually see that in game?
Yeah, you can. You just have to... No one ever turns around and looks up. So you would never know.
You just go straight to the board. You go straight across.
Exactly.
Man.
But it's there.
There was so much care put into these levels and environments. It's honestly insane, and I think that's a big part of the reason as to why Banjo-Kazooie has so much staying power, why it's such a universally beloved game today.
Yeah, you feel it every step of the way. The gameplay, the animations, the music, and somehow everything works cohesively, and it creates this very unique feeling world. In a similar way, Mario works like that too, you know?
Right.
You've got very Mario-specific things. Every character feels like this weird cohesive piece in a Mario world, and the same with Banjo, even though literally Rare just put eyeballs in like everything.
Honestly, yeah, even in Spiral Mountain, there were just onions, carrots, cauliflower with eyes on them, and all of a sudden they were characters.
It just all feels right for some reason.
The other thing is the dialogue as well. You've got Banjo, who's a chill, laid-back, nice guy, and Kazooie, who's more snarky.
Oh yeah, Kazooie's sassy. That's what Kazooie is.
Oh yeah.
Banjo's... I don't know, they always play it off like Banjo's dumb, but I've never gotten the vibe that Banjo's actually dumb.
No, I think he's just chill. I don't think he's stupid or anything.
They definitely say that.
They do. I think he's just a simple guy. Like, not simple in a bad way, simple as in just...
Yeah, he chooses that.
Yeah.
He chooses that. He chose to wake up on that side of the bed.
Exactly. And when they speak, they have this sort of garbled up speech, I guess you could say. Exactly that. I don't know whether that was like a hardware limitation or an intentional choice, but it's a big part of the game's charm.
It is a big part of the game's charm. Yeah, it does make you wonder. I can't help but feel like the original reason why it's doing that is like cartridge space limitations. But in Banjo-Tooie, they could totally have voice acting because like, you think of a game like Conquer, which has full voice acting throughout the whole game. I guess there are some dialogue that come up that don't have voice acting, but they definitely were capable of it. DK64 had it too.
Oh yeah, there were quite a few voice lines in that game. You had
okay,
K. Rool in the cutscenes as well.
K. Rool and the other Kremlin stuff.
Yep. Oh, I remember spamming that save button on the pause menu and just making DK go, okay, like 20 times in a row.
I know. It's iconic, yeah. Banjo-Kazooie, man. What a game. Really built on that Mario 64 formula.
Right, it took what that game did and refined it to the point of near perfection.
It's so bizarre how forward-thinking they were. You think Mario, they're like, wow, this is so forward-thinking, and then it's like Banjo's the forward-thinking version of Mario. Like, not having to leave the level to collect everything.
Yep.
That's like one of the biggest things for sure.
Such a good change.
Yeah, going back to Mario 64, even Mario Sunshine, still you'd have to leave out of a level to select the next mission. Like it's still like that same format. They really didn't change it till way later.
Yeah, it took them until Odyssey, didn't it?
Yeah, pretty wild. Banjo was doing it in 98.
Right from the beginning.
Basically.
I have to say, the level design in that game was also fantastic. You had some really creative ideas there, like Treasure Trove Cove, Freeze Easy Peak, Click Clock Wood, and I love how the theming of the level was sort of incorporated into the actual layout, the actual platforming, all of the jiggies. It's really well done.
Yeah, there's very few jiggies that I think I dread collecting, with the exception of maybe like 1 or 2 in Rusty Bucket Bay.
The propeller jiggy.
Yeah, that's awful. But yeah, I don't know. A lot of them are pretty... They don't take a ton of effort, and thankfully there's like not much backtracking. There's only like one real instance of backtracking.
Yeah. That's the boggy second race, isn't it? Where you have to use the running shoes.
Yeah, and coincidentally, that's probably one of my top 3 least favorite jiggies to get. Mostly because I didn't mind racing him the first time, but the second time I'm like, I gotta race him again? And then he's just like harder. And if there's one thing I'll say about the Banjo-Kazooie series, any racing minigame within it, I do not like.
I'm sure we'll touch more upon that in just a little bit. Going back to the point about it being forward-thinking, you also had the transformations in that game, and if you think about Mario nowadays, how they've got Cappy and the whole possession system where you take control of different enemies like a T-Rex, Banjo-Kazooie was doing the whole transformation thing right from the beginning. You could transform into a bee, you could transform into a walrus, a pumpkin even.
Yeah, this is something that actually I probably can complain about. Only because I like the transformations. I like what you transform into. I'm so disappointed they, for the most part, they're just changed into something slightly smaller to get through hole here.
True.
I liked the pumpkin a little bit more because it was more creative with how you get into holes. It was like go into the gutter on the Mad Monster Mansion and you flush down the toilet, stuff like that.
Yeah,
yeah. That was more clever, I think. The tick could climb surfaces, but they functionally were very similar between all of them.
Yeah, it was either become smaller to go into a smaller hole or to allow you to cross some form of hazardous terrain that Banjo and Kazooie can't normally cross.
Right, but very cool idea. And it didn't hinder anything, I'm just complaining to complain about it because of what we get later.
Right, man. Another thing I love about Kazooie is its hub world, Gruntilda's Lair.
Arguably one of the greatest hub worlds of all time.
It really is. The way each room is laid out, even though they're quite narrow, quite constrained, it just feels so sprawling. It feels like exactly how you'd expect exploring through a witch's lair to feel.
Yes, it's magical. It's like the Blue's Clues house. Okay? It's small on the outside. You only see one thing, but then you get into it and it's like, how is it so big? It just keeps going. There's more rooms. It just keeps going.
Right, because there's winding corridors, there's that big statue of Grunty in the middle at one point, and there's just more and more note doors that you open up to go through more and more of these winding passageways. You got the secret Cheeto spellbooks as well hidden away. Man, it's fantastic.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny to like, because it just doesn't really map out from the outside versus the inside. Technically, you'd be climbing the tower, right? You're going straight up. But really, you don't really get a towery effect until the very end when you're like at the top,
right?
Like Grunty's like actual lair. You get stairs, like you're always going up, but it's never like super high. Take like 5 steps up and you're in the next area, and you're like, okay. But it's cool. I wish we could have flown in from the outside and like flown up to the top and then like busted through a window or something.
That would have been cool. Yeah.
In like a shortcut. I don't know if you get into any like Kirko mods or anything.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar.
Yeah, he has one where you go into Spiral Mountain and you can do just that. You can fly up and like fly into one of the windows, and there's like a little secret area with the jiggy.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it was a good touch. And it looks exactly how you'd imagine it would. What a great hub world. And it's so environmental. It goes from a creepy castle to like a mountain to like a desert.
Very true. And like the music also adapts as you go into these different zones of the hub world. Like you've got the normal Gruntilda's Lair theme, but then when you approach Mumbo's Mountain, it goes into the Mumbo's Mountain one. It's a really cool use of the different instrumentation.
Yes, it's amazing. That's like a rare games thing. I don't know if they've done it since Banjo. I guess they did it in Donkey Kong Country even, where like you'd hear alternative versions of the tune as you like transition into different areas.
Mm-hmm.
Like you go underwater and all of a sudden the music changes to a water variant.
Oh yeah.
I love that stuff. That's so cool.
Adaptive music.
It's such a rare thing.
Mm-hmm. Every single composition in that game is just fantastic.
Yeah, there's not a single tune that's not memorable. It's so good.
The way these themes just stick in your head and have so much staying power. I don't know how they pulled it off.
Yeah, every aspect of it is really iconic. That's kind of the word. Iconic.
That's really what Banjo-Kazooie is. It's iconic, and I'd call it a masterpiece, and I'd also say it's timeless.
Yeah, it is. I had a friend who was talking about Banjo-Kazooie. He's like, I know you really love it. And he's like, but is it that good? Really? He's like, looking back. And I was like, yeah, it is. I was like, I went back and played it the other day. It's just as good. It's really good. He's like, are you sure you're not hitting it with the nostalgia binders? And I had another friend come out of the woodwork, and he was like, no, it holds up. I was like, I'm so glad I'm not the only one with this opinion in this conversation.
No, it's not just nostalgia. The game was so well made.
I mean, I think about the N64 in particular, like, it doesn't have a big library at all. It has like 388 games. And the PlayStation had like over 1,000. I feel like I hear more about 10 to 20 N64 games that were just amazing than any other PlayStation game ever released. You know, Banjo, Mario, Zelda, Smash Bros. It was filled with so many good games. So many good games. And Banjo was like almost the cream of the crop, if not the cream of the crop. It was pretty good. It's like top 5 for sure.
Oh, easily, yeah.
It's crazy. First go into 3D and we get these bangers.
Yep.
We thought the future was so bright.
And for a little while it was.
For a little while it was, you're right.
Because Banjo-Kazooie, it was a resounding success, so rare. They immediately got to working on a sequel, and around 2 years later, in the year 2000, Banjo-Tooie was born.
Oh my gosh. I love this game.
I'd say when it comes to Banjo-Tooie, there's 3 camps of people, right? You've got the people who like Tooie, but prefer Kazooie. You've got the people who consider Tooie to be a bad game, and then you've got the third group who prefer Tooie to Kazooie. So, my question to you is, where on the spectrum do you fall?
I am the third group. I love Tooie over Kazooie.
I'm the same. There we go. I love that.
I have made so many videos. I actually made a Banjo-Kazooie versus Banjo-Tooie, and I talk about why I love Banjo-Tooie more. And I get quite a bit of flack online. I did a video called Defending Banjo-Tooie.
Yeah.
And, you know, people come in and they're like, you prefer Tooie, like, your opinion's irrelevant. Like, so many people are like, Tooie's fine, Kazooie is way better.
Yeah.
Or they absolutely hate, like, there's more people I think that don't like Tooie, but love Kazooie. Than anything else. And it kind of frustrates me because in my mind Tooie just did what Kazooie did, but bigger.
Right, yeah. Bigger is the perfect word to describe Tooie. It's such a massive expansion from the world of Banjo-Kazooie, from, you know, the bigger levels to how interconnected they are, to all of the new characters and moves that it introduced.
Tooie is one of the only games I can think of where you keep your entire moveset from the previous game and you get it right off the bat.
Oh yeah, you just have everything. And there were even some improvements made from your previous kit. For example, like with the rolling, you can actually change the direction that you're moving, or your mid-roll.
Exactly.
You've got the running shoes which can run on water. It makes it so seamless when you go from Kazooie to Tooie. Even though they're very fundamentally different games, the fact that you have all of your moves from Kazooie means that you can just jump straight into it. It doesn't baby you or anything.
No, I don't need hand-holding. Although I will say Tooie definitely had its moments where it kind of scared me as a kid.
There is definitely a much darker tone in Tooie compared to Kazooie. Like, right off the bat, 5 minutes into the story, they just kill bottles.
They just kill one of the main characters from the first game, yeah. And he comes back as a ghost, which scared me. But I was scared of Gruntilda, for sure.
Right.
In Kazooie, I remember I was always scared of Gruntilda because she would randomly, like, pop up and start talking to me.
Yep, with those rhymes, those insults, yep.
That scared me. That scared me. Every time she popped up, I'd be like, oh no! And then she comes back in the second game and she's a skeleton.
Yep.
And that scared me actually a little bit less, I think, than her green form. For some reason, I wasn't as intimidated by the skeleton. It was like, oh yeah, I beat her and her eyes falling out.
Her plans were a lot more serious, I'd say, in Banjo-Tooie, because not only did she kill bottles right at the beginning, but she used this giant laser beam to suck the life out of King Jingling as well, which was also not too far in the game.
Right at the beginning. It's like, let's just keep wiping people out
Literally.
that are like your main character. It's like an episode of The Walking Dead. Is anybody safe?
They just introduced this guy. You know, he seems like a nice dude, he gives you a jiggy, and then 2 seconds later, he's dead.
Yeah. Oh no. And the gray Jinjo house.
Oh yeah.
You immediately go into that first area and that gray Jinjo house is destroyed, and they're like, this is in loving memory to the gray Jinjo family who was killed by Grunty's sister's drill or whatever.
It is surprisingly dark, and also, like, right at the beginning in Spiral Mountain, you just see everything around you being destroyed. You see Banjo's house being all charred and burnt, and then you've got the really, like, sorrowful, morose rendition of Spiral Mountain playing in the background.
Yep, absolutely depressing. And the bridge being destroyed, that always depressed me. I wish you could walk into the layer, though, and, like, actually explore the entire layer again. That would have been a really cool detail if they did that.
Yeah, it's a shame the vast majority of it, barring that entrance room, was blocked off. But I guess I can see why they chose to do that.
Yeah, I really wish you could, though. It would be so cool to, like, go back to Mumbo's Mountain or whatever and, like, see what's changed or something. It could have been like Pokemon Gold or Silver.
True.
How you could unlock the Kanto region.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
I know they're probably pushing limits on the size of the cartridge, though.
Oh, 100%. You know, Tooie, it did have a few performance issues purely because of just how much they were pushing the N64, you know? You had those frame rate drops happening throughout.
Yeah, which is a big thing people complain about, but the frame dips, like, Rare accounted for them, which is the most bizarre thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, with the way the cutscenes were synced up.
That timing, they had to completely redo the music in the Xbox Arcade release because the original music compensated for the lag and like slowed down in tempo and everything.
Yeah. Did they actually replace it, or did they just keep the desynced music? I always forget.
Now you're making me question myself, but I'm pretty sure they just replaced it. But yeah, it's pretty crazy. And the frame dips didn't bother me growing up at all.
Me neither.
And honestly, going back and playing, even though I noticed them, they still don't really bother me that much.
I haven't actually played the N64 version since I was a kid. Back then I didn't really care much about the frame dips, but since then, when I've gone to replay it, it's been on the Xbox version, so it doesn't really stick out in my mind as something that really affected my experience of the game.
It would dip down to like 12 frames or like something really low, but the game only ran at 24 frames to begin with, so it kind of chugs along anyways. But we didn't care about that stuff. I still don't really care about that stuff. I mean, that being said, if I'm playing a game and it runs at like 12 frames, I probably would care, but...
You can excuse it for an N64 game.
Yeah, for an N64 game, that's probably it. That's a little bit of nostalgia blinders, but it's on a console that, honestly, they were pushing the boundaries. Banjo-Tooie was the first game I ever played where your shadow looked like your shadow.
True.
And I remember that being a big deal to me because every game I'd played before then, I was like, my shadow's just a little circle. And I was so blown away. I was like, holy crap, his shadow looks like Banjo.
Honestly, graphically that game was phenomenal. Like you said with the shadows as well, just the whole lighting engine was awesome. Like if you had two light sources shining on you, then you'd have two shadows appearing as well, which that was really awesome. And one of the best showcases of how amazing that game looks, I have to say, was Master Jigui's temple, because on the floor you had the whole reflective surface.
Yes.
It just looked gorgeous.
Yeah, that was a really big contender for frame dips.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that room specifically. It does look cool though. And it's literally they just like mirrored the gameplay.
That's all it is.
That's all they did in like every single reflection instance in the game. So I think there's a reflection instance in Grunty's
Grunty Industries?
Yeah, Grunty Industries, thank you. I was gonna say Grunty's Furnace Fun. I'm like, wait a minute. There's too many. Grunty owns too many things. She's like some sort of like crazy tycoon. She has a ship import yard, a game show, 2 game shows.
She's got an amusement park, a whole factory.
Yep, a big tower, and she's got a second tower. Yeah, she's got a lot of crazy stuff. She's gotta be rich.
You never really think about that, but she must be.
Oh yeah, she definitely is. Look at her wine cellar in Mad Monster Man.
True, I know, that's another thing. She's got a whole mansion too.
Not that she really upkeeps it, but
It's there.
it's there. She's got one. Man, but Banjo-Tooie, transformations, improvement on Kazooie. Granted, some people don't really like some of the transformations, but I love that each transformation does something unique as opposed to just turning small or big or whatever. Or in some cases, like the T-Rex, small and big.
True.
Cool. I like that there's 2 transformations there. I defend that level.
You're a pterodactyl end fan.
I'm not even like a big fan of it. I think it's a B tier level, but I just can't stand people saying it's like empty and boring. I'm like, come on, dinosaurs. You explore the whole outside and then you go inside all the different caves and each one has different things inside of it. It's fun.
I think that's a big kind of criticism that people have with the worlds in Banjo-Tooie. Just a lot of people just say they feel big and empty, but personally I don't see it. Sure, they are big, but empty? Not so much.
I have never felt like they're empty, and even keeping that like nugget in my brain, because I don't really have a problem with being biased. Like, there's a certain level of nostalgia I have and I'm like, I get it. But then I'll go back and I'll play these games and I'm like, no, you have to look at things sometimes for the time it was released. You have to take in all the factors, and like, we still have games today that have less in the worlds than Banjo-Tooie. You know, at least they put stuff in it for us. They're not empty, and you traverse pretty quickly too.
Yeah, you run pretty quickly, you've got the warp pads as well, so you can teleport between different areas, and the worlds are just filled with not only collectibles like the Jiggies, the honeycomb pieces, the Jinjos, and the Cheeto pages, but also a bunch of new side characters that they introduced. The original Banjo-Kazooie had maybe like 1 or 2, like Gobi and Boggy, but in Tooie, there were so many. Like, every world had a bunch of just different characters to interact with.
Every world had like 30-40 new characters. It was awesome.
It just made it feel so alive.
Yes, exactly. And it really expanded that world introduced into Kazooie. And it even expanded the characters we already had in Kazooie. Like, it gave Bottles an entire family. It gave him his, I don't know why I always want to say this. It's his brother, right? Jam Jars is his brother.
Yeah.
I always want to say it's his cousin for some reason. But they gave us his entire family, like his relatives, and Klungo, they build like a narrative around him that they capitalize on later a little bit.
Yep.
And he has a wife apparently, though we never see her. And like Grunty, even Grunty has sisters.
Yep.
It's like, what happened to her other sister, though, from the first game?
Oh, true, Brentilda, she kind of just disappeared. I forgot about her.
She disappeared, and she's the only good sister, apparently.
And then, with the Jinjos as well, they introduce a whole Jinjo king and different families of Jinjos. With the Jiggies, you've got a whole Jiggy religion with priests and Master Jiggy Riggy.
That's funny. I always thought that was great. It's actually why my name is all one word. I was like Jiggy Wiggy, Jiggy back. I made it all one word. But yeah, it's such a cool, colorful expansion of the world, and you're introduced to so many characters, and a lot of those characters feel important. You know, I don't know how it gives it this level of importance. Like, if I play Conquer, for example, I meet a character, I'm not attached to them at all, for the most part. Like, a lot of the characters in the game. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Banjo, it's like, I remember, like, almost every single one. You think about the small details, like the guard at the temple games in Mayhem Temple. He's got a lot of personality.
Yeah. Another one that just popped into my head, you've got the fast food vendors in Witchy World. You got Big Al and Salty Joe. You got Big Al sneezing all over his food. You can even see he's got like a 1-star hygiene rating on his apron. Just all of these characters add so much flair to the levels.
Yes, they do. Oh man, the aliens that you save from Atlantis, and then they'll like fly up in the ship and they'll show up in a later level in Hailfire Peaks. I love that stuff. That's the best. And the fact that Kazooie asks if one of their names is Elvis, which is a reference to Perfect Dark. Also amazing. Rare even makes a toilet memorable with Lago.
True. I don't know how they managed that, but yeah.
Put googly eyes in a toilet, it's a character. It's amazing. But I love Banjo-Tooie so much. I love all even though the different types of eggs are really situational, I love changing through them like frequently and just hitting random enemies with them to see how they react.
True, because for example with the ice eggs, you don't actually use them that often in the game, like maybe putting out a couple of fires here and there, but I did just sometimes randomly switch to them, just to hit enemies and freeze them, see what it would do.
I loved, well, the 2 eggs I used the most were obviously the grenade eggs.
Oh, yep, you gotta use
Those are
grenades.
just the best eggs at the end of the day.
Yep.
But I did like using the fire eggs because it would light the enemies on fire and then they'd run around and be like, ah! That was always very entertaining to me. It's a little sadistic, but I loved it.
Yeah, and alongside the eggs, there were just all of those new moves that Jam Jars taught you, those advanced techniques. You had the first-person shooter segments. Honestly, two of the biggest things that I think were awesome additions that felt like really natural extensions of the moveset were the ledge grabbing and the egg aiming, which you get in Mayhem Temple.
Ledge grabbing, huge. Egg aiming, I guess it's important, but I'd rather not.
The reticle controls in Tooie are a little bit fiddly, I have to say.
It's not even just Tooie, it's like they kept the same reticle controls for a long time, because even in like Star Fox Adventures, the reticle plays exactly the same. It's a little frustrating.
True, but I do think, because there were a lot of airborne enemies in Tooie, the ability to hit those guys, and also go into first-person mode and shoot eggs when you're either underwater or in the air, I thought that was a cool addition.
Yeah, once you get the homing cheat, just highly recommend using that. Makes everything easier, especially with Lord Hu Fok Fok.
Oh, I always just went with the submarine for him. I didn't bother with the eggs, I just used all the torpedoes on him.
Using the homing eggs makes it a lot easier, I'll tell you that much.
Right, I remember struggling with that guy when I was just trying to hit all those glowing yellow spots.
Which, that's a big thing too, the bosses.
True, every single world in Tooie had its own boss fight, and this was like a proper structured thing, because in Kazooie, I guess he had a couple of things that could be considered bosses, but they weren't in every single world. Like he had Nipper, the crab, the big boombox, but in Banjo-Tooie, every world had one, like Target Zan and Old King Cole, and for beating each boss, you'd get a Jiggy.
And they all had so much style. Mr.
Oh, yeah.
Patch.
Mr. Patch.
Oh man.
I think my favourite has to be Terry though, because of the way he's worked into some of the jiggies in that level. Like how after you beat him, you have to go and hatch the eggs of his kids, and then he gives you another jiggy.
Oh man, my favorite is Minji Jongo.
Oh, that's a good shout, yeah.
I was not smart enough to realize that there were two Mumbo Huts in the first place. And I just went in one, and then he attacked me, and I got really scared as a kid. And I thought my friend was just like evil now, and I was like, what have they done? and then he ended up being this like Terminator robot, and I was like, whoa. And then after that, I went into the next Mumble Hut, and I realized there were two, and I went in, and I was like so skeptical of him.
Trust issues for life.
I can't trust you anymore. And to this day, I just, for some reason, never remember which Mumbo Hut is the bad one in Cloud Cuckoo Land.
I played Tooie recently, so it's fresh in my mind, and I'm pretty sure the blue one is the bad one and the red one is the good one.
I think you're right. That sounds right.
Which is weird, because you'd expect it to be the other way around.
Every time I jump back in and play Tooie again, I'm like, oh no, which one was it? But I'm always ready. But if you transform into Mumbo and go to the other one, you can just watch him sleep.
Yeah. I did that once. It doesn't let you actually initiate the fight, but you just sort of see him snoozing.
I don't even want to initiate the fight. I just want him to have an interaction. Just like say something. Like imagine Mumbo goes in, he's oh, that's the last time I drink that, or whatever.
It's not like the Spider-Man meme where they're pointing at each other. I'd imagine it going a bit like that.
Yeah, what else about Tooie, man? Music is still banging. Just as good. More tracks. It feels like a cohesive expansion of Banjo-Kazooie.
Yep.
Just like the characters.
Oh yeah. Every single unique situation you're in has its own different music track. Like the one that blew my mind was that when you're in Glitter Gulch Mine and there's a tunnel that leads to Witchy World, when you go towards that area, you hear a variant of the Glitter Gulch Mine theme playing with the Witchy World instruments.
Yes.
I just found that to be the coolest thing ever. I don't know why. It's just the level of rigorousness and care that was put in to make an entirely separate track just for that section.
It's amazing.
It's amazing, yeah.
It is. My only complaints about Tooie, Cauldron Keep should have been an entire level to give us 10 more jiggies to get to 100.
Yep.
90 is such a weird number.
Agreed.
I guess there's some worlds that I don't find as strong as others.
Yeah, I will say, well, like overall, my favorite worlds in Tooie I'd rank above my favorite worlds in Kazooie. They're not as consistently solid as Banjo-Kazooie's.
Exactly. Yeah, I'd say the exact same thing.
Like, I love Jolly Roger's Lagoon, I love Hailfire Peaks, but worlds like Cloud Cuckoo Land, say, I'm not as keen on.
Yeah, I think Grunty Industries is it's not high on my list.
Hmm.
I don't like it. I like the idea of it. I like the idea of it being slightly an alternate way to get into. Like, I actually really enjoyed that.
Oh yeah, with the Chuffy the Train.
But the whole blocking pathways, so you can't move this way unless you're this specific character, or if you're a transformation, you can't move past this square. I'm like, I don't like that. It makes you have to remember a very specific path, whereas you're in the same floor, you're in the same room. It's like you just can't get past the boxes. You can see where you need to go. Like, you shouldn't limit me that way. I don't like that.
Yeah, I think for that reason, or for similar reasons, Grunty Industries is typically, one of the levels that's looked back on less favorably in Banjo-Tooie.
Yeah.
But there are some really strong ones in there.
And I'm not even gonna say I dislike it. It's just not my favorite. It's my least favorite level of Banjo-Tooie, but my favorite level from Banjo-Tooie is Hailfire Peaks, which some people don't like either, but I love it.
Excellent choice, yeah. Hailfire Peaks, it's great.
I love both sides, fire and ice. I think it's cool. And they both have a boss. It has 2 bosses.
Yep, Chili Billy and Chili Willy.
Even though they're the same, they're funny.
And they think you're that pizza delivery guy.
Right? It also has the Yeti, Bigfoot, Bigafoot.
That was it, yeah.
That's it, Bigafoot.
I did like the snowball transformation as well, and how you had to go into the fiery side at one point, and you'd slowly start to melt, and you'd have to quickly get back to the icy side to hit a switch or something.
Yeah, and even like, if you were in the snow, you'd constantly be growing, and you'd just get giant. I love that.
Yep.
Oh, man. Such a great transformation. I almost wish we got a second transformation. That would make it the perfect level.
Oh, imagine that, yeah. Something in the fiery side. What could you transform into?
I would say a dragon, but they let you do that, and you get to keep it through the whole game, which is amazing.
True, Dragon Kazooie was such an awesome little addition. Like, they did not have to do that at all, but they did it anyway.
They gave us a reason to have the ice key.
Yep.
And that was it. Stop and swap. So legendary. I wish it more became of it, but I love that they capitalized on some things in Tooie. Even if you just had to recollect them.
Yeah.
It's fine with me.
Like giving you the Breegull bash as well.
Yep. Breegull bash doesn't give you one other move? Or is that the only other move?
I think you get the homing eggs cheat from Heggy as well. And then you unlock like a Jinjo in the multiplayer mode.
Oh yeah, I don't care about that one.
Yeah.
I did not play a lot of Banjo-Tooie multiplayer, to be honest.
Me neither. I played a little bit. I was more into the DK64 multiplayer.
100%. Me too. If I was going to play a first-person shooter, I'd just play GoldenEye. That being said, if it comes out to Switch Online, I will definitely play it online.
Yep. Hopefully it will one day.
I don't know what they're waiting for.
Diddy Kong Racing isn't there either. I don't know why neither of those games are on there at the moment.
I bet they're going to try to sell the service when they get the next Switch. They're going to be like, NSO is being expanded too, with a bunch of hot new games. And then they're going to show Diddy Kong Racing, Banjo-Tooie, like a bunch of rare heavy hitters. Yeah. They're going to do all the heavy hitters later just to try to sell the console.
Oh, yeah.
That's what they do. Man, Banjo freaking Tooie.
It's a less refined, less streamlined, arguably less polished game than Banjo-Kazooie, but it was just so ambitious.
It's almost hard to be as polished as Banjo-Kazooie because Banjo-Kazooie is such a small, tight experience. I mean, people speedrun it for a reason, right?
Yep.
And Banjo-Tooie, it's like, they were like, oh no, we gotta put lots of stuff to collect, lots of stuff to... They actually simplified collecting in this one as opposed to games like Donkey Kong 64. Like, we can't pack it that much, but we gotta pack it quite a bit. Make the world's giant. Put a boss in every level. Yeah, why not? I love it.
And they added all of these different connections and passageways between the different levels as well. It just made it feel like a world rather than separate levels.
One giant, cohesive world. Interconnected. It is amazing. And how they can make it feel like Hailfire Peaks is in the same place as Atlantis. And like, it makes no sense, but at the same time I accepted it way more than Kazooie having separate little like portals that you go into these worlds. It was awesome. Plus, I think one big part of it is the train.
Yes.
Honestly, you don't really need to use the train other than a couple missions. But like, just the simple fact of having this vehicle that can travel on a railway and it can show up in every single level adds to that immersion too. It makes you think, oh yeah, it came from this station to that station. Like, it's another level that these worlds connect.
Yep.
in addition to like random holes that you go through and all of a sudden you're in a different world. They were connecting the pieces in multiple ways at the same time, which was awesome.
It really was. And, I'll always applaud Banjo-Tooie for that. Few games are really able to convey that same sense of a world, especially like back in the N64 games. I cannot think of like a single game from that generation that felt as sprawling as Banjo-Tooie managed to feel.
Closest game I can think of is probably Zelda. Ocarina of Time specifically. I mean, but even then, I still think Tooie is way larger.
Yeah.
Because DK64 followed the formula of like portals, literally. Yep. Yeah, it's pretty wild. Tooie was very forward thinking.
It was. The way I'd analogize Banjo-Tooie is that I'd say it's the Majora's Mask to Banjo-Kazooie's Ocarina of Time, because it's like the darker, more complex, less generally beloved sequel.
Yeah.
Because all of the worlds are bigger, the jiggies are more complex, the story is a bit more edgy, and that's a similar sort of vibe to how Majora's Mask was compared to Ocarina.
Yep. The funny thing about that is I like Majora's Mask better than Ocarina of Time as well, for those exact reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And like even expanding upon the moveset, like Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo rolls by himself. In Tooie, Banjo and Kazooie are rolling together.
Yep.
And it makes it feel like they're more experienced, like they practiced this. Like, oh, this is 2 years later. They're better at that move now. You know? And Majora's Mask did the same thing, like jumping off platform to platform. Link would actually start doing these little like flips
little
and
tricks.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Little tricks, like he's used to it. I'm like, I love those little details. They just make such a difference. It makes it feel better. Yeah, that's Banjo-Tooie. It's a great game.
It is indeed. And it was followed up with,
Game Boy games!
Yeah.
Oh man, Banjo Pilot.
Well, before Banjo Pilot, you had Grunty's Revenge in 2003.
Was Revenge before Pilot?
I believe so, yeah. I think Grunty's Revenge was 2003 and Pilot was 2005, I want to say.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know why I thought that one came out first. I guess I was just thinking Diddy Kong Racing. It makes more sense.
Right.
But, I mean, there's not much to talk about. Banjo Pilot, in my opinion, is not that great.
Yeah, I mean, it's a serviceable GBA racer. It's not a whole lot more than that, but I guess there's a little bit of history there with how it started as a Diddy Kong Pilot and then eventually went on to just get reskinned into a Banjo-Kazooie game.
Yep, but Grunty's Revenge, I mean, full-fledged Banjo adventure, like that isometric overhead view like a Zelda game, and it's essentially Banjo-Kazooie 1.5.
Yeah, Banjo 1.5e. It's, even though it released after 2, the story takes place in between the first 2 games, and it's done in such a way that at the end of it all, everything is pretty much the same as it was at the beginning.
Yeah, it always bothered me that he knew moves from Banjo-Tooie, like, you could do the bill drill and everything, and I'm just like, he shouldn't have this yet. But I loved it. It's actually a really fun handheld game. It's a really good Game Boy game.
Yeah, it was a faithful transition of the N64 games into a handheld form. I think they did as well as they could have done, to be honest.
Yeah, like how do you make it better? I don't think you could.
Because you had 5 worlds with 100 notes in each and 10 jiggies. Granted, they were smaller in scale, but you'd expect that. This is a GBA game, not an N64 game. And a good chunk of Banjo and Kazooie's moveset was transitioned across here. You had a lot of the different types of eggs, you had the Bill Drill, the Wonder Wing, Shock Swing Pads, Talon Trot. I don't know how they crammed so much into a GBA game, but they did pull it off.
Yeah, it's just really good. If people haven't played it, they should go play it. It's arguably one of my favorite GBA games.
Yeah, I'd rank it pretty highly. I will say that at points it did get a little bit repetitive, like with some of the missions that were kind of reskinned and reused across the different levels, but overall, that's just sort of a minor gripe in an otherwise pretty fun experience.
Yeah, it's solid. Especially just appreciate it for it's a Game Boy game, you know? And they captured the feel of Banjo. They did it. Well done.
Like the dialogue, the talking noises, even the music has its own little bit of charm to it. I don't believe it was actually composed by Grant Kirkhope in Grunty's Revenge, but they managed to maintain the vibe still.
Yeah, they did a great job. And we meet more characters. It expands it even more, because we meet Bottle's ancestor.
Oh yeah, Bozai. I always found his talking noise really funny.
Is Jiggy Wiggy the same?
Yeah, I think he is. I think he's referred to as just the Jiggy Priest, but he looks exactly like Jiggy
He
Wiggy,
looks
so
exactly like Jiggy Wiggy.
I'm assuming he's the same character.
Yeah, he's immortal. My papa.
Is this the Jiggy Look Back lore?
Yeah, basically.
I did also like how it expanded Spiral Mountain into like a bunch of different areas.
Yeah.
Like it made Spiral Mountain itself the hub world.
Yeah, that was an awesome touch. It also makes it feel a little more cohesive.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's not much to talk about these. I just wanted to bring them up because they exist.
Yeah, they are a chapter in the series of Banjo-Kazooie, so it's important to acknowledge them.
Yeah, and they're pretty solid if nobody's played them. Go play them. At least play Grunty's Revenge. You're not missing out too much on Banjo Pilot. I'm not a huge fan of racing games on the Game Boy Advance because they're hard to see. Like, you can't see in front of you very far. Like, people love Mario Kart on the GBA, and I'm just like, I can't really see that far ahead of me. I don't like that.
That's fair.
I want to know that there's a wall coming up so I don't crash into it.
I guess in Banjo Pilot, the consolation is that there aren't really walls, because you're in a plane.
No, there are walls, but everything looks blank and empty.
Yeah,
like,
true.
There's not much there. You're just flying forward. You're like, am I actually flying forward? If people weren't passing you and you weren't passing other people, how would you know?
There was sort of another build of Banjo Pilot, wasn't there, which looked like it was going for more of a 3D look. I don't think they got very far into development with it, but that build of Banjo Pilot looked really cool. I think it was called the Voxel engine.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now. I was not familiar with it, but yeah, that one looks better.
I think with the music and all of the characters and the items, it was a bit too much for the GBA to handle, but the fact that they managed to an extent, pull off 3D on the GBA, which very few games did, there were a couple of exceptions, is, again, a testament to how far Rareware tend to push the hardware.
Yeah, they always knew how to milk it. They still do, actually, I think. That's another argument. If they ever moved on from Sea of Thieves and didn't just keep working on it for 20 years. But that game is beautiful. I pop it up on my QOLED or whatever it is monitor, ultra wide, and watch the sunset over the ocean. It's like the most beautiful game.
I need to give it a try myself. I've never dabbled in Sea of Thieves, but...
You've never dabbled?
Perhaps
man,
one day I will.
Dabble. I think it's time.
Yeah, I think we have to address it. There's no way around it. It's got to be done.
Banjo-Kazooie, nuts and bolts.
Oh man.
I don't really dislike this game, to be honest.
It has something of a reputation, but yeah.
It's fine. It's just not great. There's some parts of it that I'm like, this is awesome. I actually really like the vehicle creation part of it. I think it's really cool to take different parts and build different machines and try to make a boat, rocket, jet thing.
You know, it was Tears of the Kingdom before Tears of the Kingdom.
Yes, and I really love Tears of the Kingdom, but that's like my personality too. I like building things like that. And solving puzzles in like a different way than intended.
Right.
Like, I will not just build a car. I will build a car that has a wing on one side that I can hit a corner and, like, do a really quick, sharp turn. You know? I'll think as creative as possible. Be like, that's how I'd use it.
Yeah, you gotta have fun with it, because, you know, the point of these games is to just experiment, push the boundaries of what the game allows you to do, and Nuts and Bolts is fantastic in that aspect.
Yeah, the only thing... You can't tease us Banjo 3E and then expect us to be happy when you make a game that's not at all like Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah, that's a massive part of the reason as to why Nuts and Bolts didn't really go down so well, because everyone was expecting another platformer, another collectathon on a much bigger scale than Tooie, you know, a bigger and better sequel. But then what we received was not that.
Nope, not at all. And they also made Banjo and Kazooie look kind of poopy.
Yeah, not a fan of a lot of the redesigns in Nuts and Bolts, especially Banjo and Kazooie themselves. The eyes just put me off.
Yes. So I did a video, an analysis of Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. And there are some models that I think translated a lot better to Nuts and Bolts style.
Yeah.
Like Grunty, I actually think looks pretty good.
Mumbo's decent as well, I think.
Mumbo is decent. I think Banjo actually isn't that bad if you change his eyes. I literally have an image in my video of him where I put like the Smash Ultimate eyes on him.
Right.
And he looks way better. Kazooie's atrocious, though.
Oh, yeah.
Kazooie looks like straight out of Viva Pinata.
They massacred Kazooie.
That one's awful. And what's really sad is, like, if you look at the teaser of Nuts and Bolts, where it's, like, drawing the world behind them, you see Kazooie's original design for Nuts and Bolts, and it actually looks okay. It definitely looks a lot worse in the final product.
I'll have to go and check that out. Like, yeah. I don't know what went wrong with Kazooie.
It looked more traditional in the Nuts and Bolts teaser, and then they just decided, let's go crazy with the eyelashes and make her feathers way bigger and beak slenderer and give this weird feathery pinata texture. They were working at Viva Pinata at the same time, so a lot of cues from that game popped over into Banjo, which probably shouldn't have happened.
Right, and I think part of the reason again why people didn't like it was that right at the beginning they took a jab at the original games. They made fun of the collectathon genre.
Oh yeah, they make fun of the fans almost at that point. They make jokes throughout the entire game where they're talking about, oh, the fans are really gonna hate how we look now. The fans are really gonna hate the vehicle creation. Like, they knew what they were doing. They have this self-awareness, but yet at the same time they're like, well, we're gonna follow through with this vision. Even though we know it's not what people want. Which I don't really understand. If you have a hankering to make a game like this, why wouldn't you just make a new IP?
Yeah, this didn't have to be Banjo-Kazooie.
I made a statement like this before, but I still stand true by it. I think if this was a Mumbo spin-off, it would have been cooler. Like, imagine playing as Mumbo. He's already got a staff, and he could use magic to assemble the cars.
Right.
Like, it makes so much more sense if it was just Mumbo.
I think that would make it a lot more palatable.
Yeah, people would accept it, and they'd be like, oh yeah, it's that Mumbo spin-off, as opposed to that, it's a good game, but it's not a good Banjo game that I hear all the time.
Those are the buzzwords that get thrown around.
I've heard the same phrase literally like 300 times. I'm just like, okay, I get it. You don't have to regurgitate the same thought.
What I do like about Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, though, is that even though it sort of outwardly clearly tries to distance itself from its predecessors, it still has a lot of nods and callbacks. Like, you've got the intro cutscene where it shows the events of Banjo-Kazooie and Tooie playing out. You got a lot of the side characters who return. And then the music as well. Lots of the remixes and the music in some of the levels brings back elements from the older soundtracks. Like in Showdown Town, there's a little bit of Jinjo Village in there.
Yeah. A lot of the music is fantastic. Banjo Land is phenomenal. I love going through Banjoland in general and just looking at all the old stuff.
All the monuments. Yeah, it's you know, a nice acknowledgement of the history of the series.
And then they just, you know, completely change it and throw it out the window.
Yep.
They're like, yeah, we did that and it was great. But look at this. We don't think it's as great. We don't think you're going to like it, but we did it. That's their attitude.
It's bizarre.
It's the self-awareness that throws me off. It's the, you know that this is not what fans want, so why wouldn't you work it into something that maybe fans would like? But that being said, again, I don't really dislike it. I make fun of the sentiment, but yeah, it's not a good Banjo game, but it's not a bad game.
Right. You can have fun
with it.
With Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts.
I had a lot of fun with it, and just playing through it and building different vehicles and trying to max out challenges and stuff. It was fun. Now, would I have had more fun if it was Banjo 3? I think so.
Absolutely. But alas, to this day, we still do not have Banjo 3.
No, we do not. And will we get it? I don't know.
The future is uncertain. I do think that the series will continue. I think the series still has a life left in it. I haven't given up hope. But an interesting question for you is that if the series were to return, would you prefer for it to go in the direction of Spyro and Crash, where you have like a fully remade version of the original games? Or would you prefer a brand new Banjo 3, new adventure? What do you think?
I have thought about this before. I think the real answer is yes, I would like a remake of the first two games and then a new sequel, because I like the idea of being visually consistent.
Yep.
Being able to do the same adventures, and that was the cool thing about the Crash remake. I was like, oh yeah, it feels like this continuation of the adventure. Not much has changed. You literally look exactly the same. And that was why I like Banjo-Kazooie to Banjo-Tooie, because you are the same. But then going from like Banjo-Tooie to something on like a PS5 or PC, and the graphics are just like dramatically different. It just doesn't feel quite right.
Right, there's a bit of a whiplash to it.
Yeah, but the perfect world scenario for me would be if they made a Banjo 3E but made it look like the 64 games.
Interesting. That's a take I haven't actually heard before.
Oh, I would love it so much. Just make it look like it. Even if you made the proper remaster, but you let us switch back to the old visuals at any time, that would be cool.
A little bit like the tonic and ukulele.
Yes, which I love, except for the fact that they force your screen to have scan lines.
Yep, don't know why they did that.
I'm not a big fan of scan lines. I like the look of the game. I don't like scan lines. Stop it. But yeah, that tonic was a great idea. I voiced in the Yuka Replayly, I was like, can we refine this tonic a little bit? And everyone was like, who cares? And I'm like, I care.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
It seems like a small thing in the grand scheme of things, but it's, it's the little things like that.
Yeah, I just love the idea of it being cohesive, whatever it looks like.
Yeah, I do like the idea of, visual consistency. I think I'm more in the camp of people who'd prefer fully fledged remakes of Kazooie and Tooie and then a 3, so just more of a traditional approach. But whether we'll see that, the world may never know.
Yeah.
Banjo news has been kind of dry as of late. There has not been a lot.
Banjo is such a weird freaking franchise for this reason. Every few months or so, all of a sudden we get Banjo news and it's like a merch drop. It's like, why are we getting new merch for this series that we haven't had a game for since 2008 or whenever it was released? Like, it makes no sense. And then, there's the Smash hype with him being released in Smash Bros, which is cool.
That was awesome.
That was amazing. I never expected that in a million years.
That made me so happy.
And it happened.
Yep.
I was so happy about it. When that Jiggy flew across the screen for that little reveal trailer, I was literally like about to poop my pants out of excitement. Because I was like, no way.
When the Jiggy came on screen, I think I was actually sneezing at the time, so I didn't actually see it.
Oh man.
It just made the reveal all the more impactful. It's crazy.
Here's what happened. I was in my car. I remember the day because I was like on my way to work from lunch. I was in my car. I pulled up in the parking lot and I knew the trailer was coming out. So I just sat and waited and didn't go back inside to work.
Yep.
I waited until this trailer and then I watched it and then I saw the Jiggy and I got really excited and I got butterflies in my stomach. I'm like, oh my gosh,
it's happening.
Is this it? And then they come out and then it was Duck Hunt, like the tease. And then I got really pissed off and I was like, now they're just mocking me.
I knew that was coming. I actually genuinely said out loud, that's Duck Hunt. That's not Banjo-Kazooie. Because they pulled the same stunt with the K-Rool trailer, where it was DDD.
I know. I was so mad. And then all of a sudden he fell from the sky like heaven's little angel. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually happening. And there was a moment of like disbelief. And then they started showing the moveset and I was like, oh my gosh, this is happening. And that was a great moment. That was probably the best reveal trailer for Smash Bros.
Oh, I agree.
At least in my opinion. I'm still bitter that they never put Rayman in it.
Maybe in the next one.
I know, but he's had representation in Smash Bros. Since the Wii U version. And I'm like, why does he have representation in it if he's not in the game? There's no Rayman content, but he's represented in the game. I thought there was way more hope for Rayman than Banjo.
Yeah.
And Banjo showed up first, and it makes no sense to me. And speaking of things that make no sense, how are all these other little 3D platformer mascots getting games before Banjo?
You got Ty the Tasmanian Tiger, you got KO the Kangaroo.
Freaking Gex. Gex is coming back. Who else? Wasn't there a Bubsy just announced or something?
I think there was, yeah. Even like SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom, that got a remake.
Before Banjo.
What's going on? It blows my mind how it hasn't happened yet. All these years, and the Banjo series still hasn't come back in any capacity. Even right now when we're seeing the whole 3D platforming genre making its big resurgence. Still nothing. Radio silence.
Still nothing. It's like one of the pioneers of 3D platforming.
It is the 3D platformer.
And nope, they won't do it. They own the rights to it. Microsoft, Rare. They're the ones that need to do something with it. And yet, they don't even release the games they talk about. They're only sticking with Sea of Thieves. Which I really like Sea of Thieves. But I'm very annoyed that they've been supporting this game for like 10 years and haven't moved on. That's a long time to not have a new IP. Or a sequel to an existing IP.
Yep, I guess they're just, they're just tunnel visioning that game now.
But at least they could pass off their games to other developers.
that's the way forward for Banjo-Kazooie, because Rareware definitely is not gonna make a Banjo 3 or a Banjo Redooey anytime soon, so they just gotta find someone who can, someone who will.
Yep. Everyone talks about Toys for Bob and Playtonic being the two like most likely things. And Playtonic, we'll see how ukulele is. I like ukulele. I think it was a cool concept. It's definitely not Banjo.
No.
You know, it's got a lot of the ideas, and it's fine. But I don't know that team can put the right feel into it. I don't know. Ukulele, maybe they'll enhance it enough, and it'll feel a little more like a proper platforming adventure. I don't know. I did not dislike ukulele. I'm not trying to bash it. I'm just saying it wasn't of the same caliber as Banjo-Kazooie. And the thing about it, it was made by a lot of the former developers of Banjo-Kazooie. It's almost like they didn't quite understand what made Banjo-Kazooie so special.
Yeah, they took certain aspects of Banjo-Kazooie and put them in ukulele, but it wasn't necessarily the aspects that made Banjo-Kazooie a great game in the first place.
Yeah, it was like Banjo-Kazooie was the sum of its parts. And ukulele was like, oh, well, we know this is the kind of part people like. And they just threw a bunch of parts in a pile. But they didn't quite piece it all together right.
Yeah. Whether ukulele will fix that remains to be seen. I do have a sneaking suspicion that they're probably working on like a direct 3D platforming sequel. I do think we'll see ukulele.
Yeah, they should have announced a sequel before announcing a replayley. They really should have said, at least at the very end of this, be like, yes, we're working on Yuka 2, because I know when we saw the Yuka replayley thing, at first I was like, is it a sequel? And then I saw it was a remake. I'm like, the game's like 5 years old.
I know. How is ukulele getting a remake before Banjo-Kazooie?
I don't know. It's just messed up. The world is crazy. Rare should just sell the rights to Banjo-Kazooie. They're not going to use it. Give it to someone else. That's my opinion.
Yep, no, I completely agree.
But that's just an opinion.
A game opinion.
Thanks for listening. I'm glad you knew exactly what I was going for there.
Yep, it was perfect.
Alright, well, what else is there? We talked about Kazooie, Tooie, Nuts and Bolts, the GBAs.
Smash Bros, ukulele, we've covered pretty much everything.
Ukulele. And they did show up in a Sonic All-Star Racing game.
That certainly existed. That was a crossover that happened.
It was a crossover that happened. Banjo and Sonic in vehicles. Coincidentally, the only other character I think doesn't need a vehicle besides Banjo is Sonic. And it's so great to have both those characters that I don't think should have vehicles in the same game. Sega's finally turning a corner though, so if Sega can do it, Rare can do it.
Let's hope. One can only dream.
Yeah. One can only dream, but I still have hope.
That dream. Project Dream.
Yes, one can only project dream, and I still have Kirkhope.
Oh, and I think on that note, we've reached the end of this episode of the Loading Zone podcast. So thank you guys very much for listening, and thank you, Jiggy Lookback, for joining me on this episode today.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
We always do a section at the end of the episode where you can go ahead and promote your own stuff, so why don't you tell the listeners about what it is that you do over on your own channel?
Okay. What it is that I do? That's an excellent question. I make YouTube videos. I make a lot of YouTube videos about Rare games for the most part, but I cover other games too, but and other companies, but I focus on Rare. I feel like I always revert back to Rare, but I've gone through all the kind of obscure stuff, more like Cameo and Perfect Dark, Viva Pinata, stuff like that. A lot of Banjo stuff, a lot of DK stuff, but I'd make like theory videos and mystery videos and defending, comparisons, like all sorts of stuff. If you like Rare, which if you're listening to this episode, you probably like Rare, yeah, just go check out my channel. You'll have a lot of content you could binge about Rare games for like probably a solid day, like a full 24 hours. So, there you go.
Yep, there you go. The links will be in the title, in the description. Go ahead and give Jiggy Lookback's channel a watch. You know, there's some really well-made, thoughtful videos on there, and a lot of effort goes into them, so can't recommend this man enough.
Thank you. Definitely go watch Mapping the Rare Universe. That's the one you should start with.
Alrighty guys, on that note, I will see you guys in the next one.